In 1927, having been the first man to fly over the North Pole a year earlier, Richard E. Byrd, naval commander, retired, dedicated to the future of aviation, fascinated by aerial navigation, carefully prepares for the first really scientific flight across the Atlantic, a flight in which safety is to be a major objective, so that it might point the way to commercial transoceanic air travel. 2 rubber boats to be taken along in case of emergency are tested. In April 1927, the plane is tested. Nose heaviness has caused the crash. The America has to be rebuilt. It is ready to go on June 29, 1927. Floyd Bennett, badly injured in the crash, will not be going. With Byrd will be George Noville, Bert Acosta, and Bert Balkin. Balkin, the relief pilot and mechanic on the flight, today tells what happened.
The load we had to carry was certified for a total gross weight of 7,500 pounds. However, in order to carry the sufficient gasoline and the instruments that we deemed necessary to have on the trip, we weighed twice as much. As a matter of fact, it weighed 15,400 pounds. It was, at that time, the heaviest load was ever taken off. It is still today the heaviest load has ever been taken off with the horsepower that we have in this aircraft. We were quite certain that it was no particular problem to fly from New York to Paris, as we figured the aircraft would have a cruising speed of about 90 miles an hour, and we figured on helping winds across the Atlantic. The takeoff on, at 5:30 in the morning on the 29th was a masterpiece of work by Bert Acosta. Our flight, after once being airborne, was quite uneventful. Had a beautiful trip during the whole night on top of the cloud level, and until we next morning hit the forewarned cold front, which was not too bad to go through. And we could have been into Paris before dark. As we had found out that it was impossible to land safely at Le Bourget, we had no recourse but to go back to the coast and land where we knew we could get down fairly decently and safely in the water. From then on, the remainder of the crew, Byrd, Acosta, and Noville, went to their emergency stations for ditching. And as far as the landing itself was concerned, it was a standard procedure. It was uneventful. We got into the water, got submerged, and it had a very strange feeling to me. It was great pleasure after this for nearly 42 hours in the air to get a bath, get cooled off, and to feel this cool water.
A month earlier, the French had welcomed Lindbergh. Now they take Byrd and his men to their hearts, rejoicing in the first non-stop transatlantic flight, carrying not only passengers, but the first bag of airmail from the United States to France. Byrd gives credit to the men who flew with him.
Our flight across the Atlantic was a big test of a man, and they came up to the mark in every respect, and I am proud of them, and proud to be one of them. They didn't make this flight for glory, but purely for science and international amity.
Once again, the land beyond the horizon beckons Byrd. Names like Scott and Peary have fired his imagination since his youth. Now he finds himself irresistibly drawn to the South Polar regions. And in the fall of 1928, his million-dollar expedition to Antarctica begins. Destination, 2,000 miles south of civilization. Then, Christmas Day, 1928, the Ross Ice Barrier is sighted. On this immense expanse of ice, symbol of the impregnable continent, Byrd and his men will make their home and try to solve its many mysteries. As the ship makes its way to harbor in the Bay of Whales, Byrd radios the United States. On this Christmas Day, in the only area in the world where a ship can get so far from civilization, we are proud to report we have been able to carry the American flag farther south than it has ever been before. As leader of this privately sponsored expedition, Byrd's first problem is to find a suitable place for a base. Bad cracks in the ice barrier must be avoided. On New Year's Day, he finds the right location, protected from the winds, accessible for unloading. He calls it Little America. The gigantic task of moving equipment from the ship to Little America, 8 miles away, begins. 5 teams of Malamutes pull more than 650 tons, gasoline, coal, shelters, food enough to feed 54 men for 15 months in the Antarctic. The colony on the ice begins to grow. From frozen barrenness springs a working community, complete with housing, radio, machine shop, weather station. Winter is fast coming upon them. The men must make ready to dig in for the long, cold Antarctic night. Tunnels that will link shack to shack must be built. They will shield the men from the weather when they come to mess. The Antarctic winter closes in rapidly. Gales rage at 120 miles an hour. With an average temperature more than 40 degrees colder than the Arctic, there is no place colder than the bottom of the world. Before the quickly freezing ice pack makes passage impossible, the city of New York, her rigging coated with ice, must be sent north, leaving Byrd and 41 men alone, the first to winter on the ice. Their radio, their only link with the outside world, thousands of miles away. By April, the phase of the midnight sun is over, and the Antarctic is cloaked in frigid darkness. Underground, Byrd spends the winter months planning the coming season. He has been discovering new lands at the rate of 4,000 square miles an hour by plane. Now his prime objective, flight to the South Pole, with Burnt Balkan as pilot, Harold June as radio operator. First, Dr. Lawrence Gould is to lead a geological party to the Queen Maud Mountains and report on flying conditions. In July, preparations begin for Gould's departure. Above them, the temperature dips to 70 below, but the 4 months of darkness will soon be over. At last, the digging out, the release from the confinement of which, writes Byrd, even little things have the power to drive disciplined men to the edge of insanity. By November, Dr. Gould's geological party is ready. 6 men and 4 dog teams on a 400-mile trek to the Queen Maud Mountains at the edge of the polar plateau. Clear weather is absolutely essential for the polar flight. In its winter hangar, while they wait to hear from Gould, Byrd's plane is made ready. Byrd carefully checks his bubble sextant and sun compass, the aerial navigation aids he has invented. Then on November 25th, 1929, Gould radios his report. No clouds anywhere, perfect visibility. The first flight to the South Pole is on. The plane is the Floyd Bennett, named for Byrd's companion of the North Pole flight, who died shortly before the expedition began. And under his coat, Byrd carries a stone from Bennett's grave wrapped in an American flag. Its destination, the South Pole. At 90 miles an hour, Byrd follows the same course to the pole that took Amundsen 20 miles a day by dog sled 18 years earlier. Ahead looms the Liv Glacier, the only way open to the South Pole. They must get through. We've got to climb, Byrd instructs Bernd Balken, the pilot. At an altitude of 9,000 feet, they can't possibly make it. Climb, we've got to climb. But the plane is too heavily loaded. It's got to be lightened. All their food must be dumped. 250 pounds of it, enough to feed 4 men for a month. They make it, with 500 feet to spare, and ahead lies the South Pole. Over the pole, the trapdoor is opened, and the American flag, weighted with the stone from Floyd Bennett's grave, is dropped. The news is flashed to Little America. We have reached the pole. We are returning. Only the airplane can beat the Antarctic, explorer Amundsen had told him. Now Byrd has proved it true. Is the first man to fly over both poles, but writes, "Success is not the most important thing. The way a man plays the game can be more important than the winning of the game." In June 1930, the city of New York steams into New York Harbor, and the people turn out to greet the man who has spent 13 months and 25 days opening a new continent. Promoted to the rank of Rear Admiral retired, even amid the cheers, Richard E. Byrd already has resolved to return. The 20th century will continue after this message from your host, the Prudential Insurance Company of America.
There are 3 basic financial hazards that can cut off the income of any family: death of the breadwinner, sickness or injury that prevents a man from earning a living, retirement without having enough money to live on. Your Prudential agent has an insurance program for you that protects your family against these 3 hazards. Essentially, this program is like a triangle. At the base is Prudential Life Insurance. This is the foundation of any sound insurance program. It's the most important of all insurance protections, for it protects your family during the growing years. It provides them with solid financial protection against many of the uncertainties of the future. Then there's Prudential Sickness and Accident Protection. One of the best ways to help replace your lost income and to help pay the bills when you're laid up because of sickness or injury. And third, there's Prudential Retirement Income, a monthly check from the Prudential that can help you enjoy a secure and independent future once the children are grown and on their own. That's the program your Prudential agent can provide for you and your family. Life insurance, sickness and accident protection, retirement income. 3 very necessary protections planned by your Prudential agent and designed to meet your family's specific needs. To find out how Prudential can help keep your family together and secure, see your Prudential agent.
In October 1933, Admiral Byrd sets out on his second expedition to Antarctica. January 17, 1934, the voyage of more than 13,000 nautical miles is over. After almost 4 years, Byrd returns to Little America. More elaborate than the first, this expedition will cover greater territory than any before and establish beyond any doubt the fact that Antarctica is one solid continent. Under a 4-year layer of snow, the old camp at Little America will be found sagging but intact. Shovels left behind in 1930. They can now be used to expand the site as Little America comes to life once more. An advanced base is set up for 3 men to study the weather during the winter darkness. But when it begins to close in too rapidly to supply the base sufficiently, Admiral Byrd decides to stay there alone. Charles Murphy tells the story.
This base was established about 120 miles south of the main base at Little America. It consisted of nothing but a shack, not much more than a box. It was long enough for Byrd to take several steps in, not much higher than was required to allow him to walk without stooping. In this base, Byrd lived alone for nearly 5 months. These 5 months were months of polar darkness, months in which the sun never appeared. Months, too, of very intense cold, cold down to 80 degrees below zero.
At Little America, things go well all through the winter night of April and May and June. Charles Murphy keeps regular radio contact with Byrd, and the scientific studies unlocking the mysteries of the Antarctic continue. 20 branches of science are served: geophysics, zoology, biology. The men do not know that Byrd is now in serious difficulty. In July, Byrd's radio messages begin coming in irregularly. Murphy, today an editor of Fortune magazine, describes the situation.
His radio schedules were missed. When he would come on, he was unable to maintain the communication for very long. I tried on several occasions to find out what it was. His answers were always non-committal. Later, of course, much later, we were to learn what was happening to him. The gasoline generator that powered his radio set was located in a tunnel outside his shack. The fumes from this generator overcame him one day while he was in the process of talking to us. The second in command of the expedition was a distinguished physicist, Dr. Thomas Poulter. As my apprehensions deepened, I discussed them at great length with Dr. Poulter. In the end, I became convinced that we had to do something, that we had to find out whether Byrd was all right. My recollection is that Poulter departed Little America late in July under conditions of extreme cold. Through all this period, and it must have been a period of intense anguish for him, Byrd never once admitted that he was in trouble, although we were later to know that he was close to death. Poulter would report to us on an hourly schedule. We would get messages from the dock. Poulter was a calm man, although he was in extreme difficulties himself and enduring hardships that would be hard to describe. He was always reassuring in his communications. For me, the most dramatic moment came when Byrd suddenly broke in, after hours of silence, with a single message. It was to say that he had seen the lights approaching from the north. An hour or so later, Poulter himself reported from his tractor to say that he had found Byrd, that Byrd was very ill indeed, but that he would live. And that for us was the end of a suspense that lasted all too long.
It is 2 months before Byrd is strong enough to make the journey home to Little America. Then, on October 12th, in the same plane that had taken him off 7 months before, he returns to the men whose lives would have been endangered had he called for help. On May 10th, 1935, at Washington Navy Yard, Byrd receives a hero's welcome. The first time in history, a returning celebrity is greeted at the dock by an American president, Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Let me add just one thing from the heart. Dick, I salute you.
In time, Byrd will discover more area of the world than any other human being in history. He will devote 30 years of his life to polar exploration, continually emphasizing the importance of Antarctica. With advances in aviation, a new era begins in Antarctic exploration. Government sponsorship, large-scale effort, names like Operation High Jump, Deep Freeze. It is enormously satisfying to the man most directly responsible. Making his 5th expedition to the Antarctic in 1955, Byrd is asked why he keeps going back. Most of all, he answers, "I guess I like the challenge of it." 15 months later, at the age of 68, Richard E. Byrd is dead. With all of the resources of modern technology and assault upon the secrets of the great white continent, it is unlikely that the epic feats of Admiral Byrd will be repeated. For him, the Antarctic had a very special meaning. In his words, the vastness, the silence, the purity, the elevation above the petty quarrels and ambitions of men and nations, all combined to form a majestic symbol of what man should want most: peace on earth.
The story of next week's episode in a moment. And now a message from your host, the Prudential Insurance Company of America.
What's the secret, Madge?
Larry, I've done a very good deed today.
Like what?
Like seeing the Michaels boy through school.
He's just 3 years old.
That's no matter. I've arranged for his entire education.
How?
I introduced Bill Harrison, our Prudential agent, to Mr. and Mrs. Michaels. They've just taken out a Prudential education plan for the boy. And, as you've so many times told me, should something happen to the parents, his education is provided for because the Prudential will furnish the money to help him complete his education.
Bravo.
And tomorrow, the Bennetts. They have a boy and a girl.
Now, Madge.
Oh, and the McCabe's, the Brewsters, the Martins, the Nobles, the Carters.
If you have children in your family, don't wait for Madge. She'll be busy in this neighborhood for a few months. See your prudential agent.
See your prudential agent.
Next week at this time, the Prudential will present the first of two programs dealing with the vital problem of the American prisoner of war, the problem of defection or resistance to the enemy.
A story of terror and humiliation, and a story of great heroism.
Next week, POW, Prisoner of War, Part 1, Korea. This is Walter Cronkite reporting for the 20th Century.